We're now joined by Mark Linscott, former Assistant USTR and Senior Advisor at US-India Strategic Partnership Forum. Mark, thank you very much for joining us. We've had very fruitful talks, so to say, between the Indian and the US side. The Commerce Secretary was quoted yesterday as saying that we're very close to a framework agreement, but we cannot give any timeline to when a deal could be struck. Where do you think the problem now lies?
Yeah, I mean, as you point out, it's been a waiting game, and too long of a waiting game. What is clear is that the negotiators on both sides have been working very hard to resolve issues and to make progress and to close gaps. And I think they are getting very near to closing those gaps in the near future. What I think seems to be missing is the political will in some respects, a real expression of this being a priority on both sides with both leaders, both President Trump and Prime Minister Modi. They talked last week. It appears they had a very warm conversation. They covered a number of areas, but what seemed to be missing was a very direct, a very specific discussion on reaching a trade deal. And I think that's going to happen for things to get unstuck.
Right. From the Indian side, the sense is that there are no further negotiation rounds that are needed. What will now make Donald Trump cross the finish line? Because clearly the deal is now at his table.
Yeah, I mean, that's always the big question. And in fact, we experienced this some during the first Trump administration. I was the negotiator during the first part of that administration. The two sides got very close to a deal. But in the end, the decisions were not made at the top level. And on the U.S. side, that was President Trump. There are issues that are still open. It's clear to me that there are still gaps on big issues like tariffs, on agriculture, on non-tariff barriers, even though they've been working hard to resolve those issues. But they've become stuck. And I think what is missing, the impetus that's needed, the jumpstart that's needed at this point in time, is for the president to make a decision and to reach that decision with Prime Minister Modi on what to do about the Russian oil tariffs, what kind of revised or lower reciprocal tariff could be struck if there is a deal to be had. These are the things that can only be done at the leaders' level to then resolve the final things in the negotiations.
Right. What I would also like to ask is the Pax Silica alliance. Were you surprised that India was not included in the Pax Silica summit that was held? And was that also an indication, a message to New Delhi that we want something more in the trade deal?
Frankly, I would not link the two. I think we were all a bit surprised to see that announcement. It seems like it's a good initiative. It's a necessary initiative. In some respects, it seems to parallel some of the efforts in the previous administration related to critical technologies, critical supply chains, and making them more resilient with key allies. It was unfortunate that India was not part of it initially, but I could imagine that there will be further talks to include India in the future. India clearly should be in the picture, should play a role. But I wouldn't connect the two. I don't think that there's not been progress to strike an interim trade deal that has. I don't think any signals were being sent with the announcement on Pax Silica related to the trade deal.
When you speak about the gaps, could you outline some of the gaps for us? When Jamieson Greer was deposing before a Senate Appropriations Committee and he was replying to one of the senators, he said, yes, India has been a tough nut to crack when it comes to agricultural imports of raw crops, dairy items and meat. Are there certain items that the US is still trying to include in the trade deal? Have we not reached an average tariff rate and consensus on an average tariff rate either?
Yeah, well, Jamieson Greer did highlight to the Senate, to the Appropriations Committee in the Senate, when asked about this, that India has made unprecedented offers, that there's been real value in this negotiation. And I think he was also upbeat. He was, I think, quite bullish on the prospects for a deal in the near future, and we should all be heartened by what he said during that hearing in his testimony. That said, though, I think that there are still hard issues that need to get resolved. I'm not sure that all of the tariffs on the Indian side have been agreed yet. And that's a meticulous process. I mean, trade negotiators, this is not sexy business. I mean, they exchange trade schedules. They've got to go line by line to determine whether they are getting the commitments they want. And I don't think that's been done yet. On agriculture, I think there are still key areas that should not be so sensitive to India. For example, sources from the United States for feed, for livestock. That should be part of this deal. I think it could be part of this deal, but I think they're still working on some of the particulars on those issues.
Right. And as we head into 2026, perhaps we will encounter more complications as well. Thank you so much, Mark, for joining us on the program, giving us your views on what has been a difficult year in India-US relations. And hopefully we will come to some sort of consensus in the days to come. Thank you once again for being with us.
Sure. The only direction is up at this point, I think. Thank you, Parikshit.